We continue now at the top of Daf 105a Daf and Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 105a. On the previous summit, the Gemara is trying to explain the brisa which says that the Yoresh does not pay the Chomesh. Again, in general, the halacha is, let's say a person denies that he owes something that he stole, and he takes a shvua, a false shvua. He says he doesn't owe what he stole, and then he admits that he lied, he admits that he took a false shvua. So the halacha is not only do you have to pay back the keren, not only do you have to pay back what was stolen, but he also has to pay back an additional fifth, and he also has to bring a carbon asham. And there was a brisa which said that this halacha that you have to pay the fifth, that applies to the Yoresh as well. It applies to the heir as well. But there's another brisa that seems to indicate that is not the case. The Yoresh does not pay the fifth. And so the Gemara explained on the previous summit that the particular situation where the Yoresh does not pay the fifth is talking about a case where the father never admitted. It was only the son who admitted. And therefore, in such a situation, since the father never admitted, the father himself never created that chiyuv of the chomesh of the fifth. And therefore, the son doesn't have to pay the fifth. But the Gemara says, but if the son is not admitting, why is he paying the principal? Why is he paying the keren? And the Gemara explained the reason why he's paying the keren is because you have over here a situation where there is no gezela. The gezela is not around, but there is achrayas nechasim, meaning to say there was a lien on the father's property. So if there's a lien on the father's property, therefore you're going to pay the keren. And the Gemara is about to ask if that is the case, you should pay the chomesh as well. In the meantime, Rashi is taking out some of the words of the Gemara. We'll continue the Rashi from the previous Amud. V'yod kameshani lay, also in this girsa of the Gemara that we have, the answer of the Gemara is kisha amad bedin kodem misaso, that they went to court before the death of the father. Now, how does that make any sense that they went to court? What does that help? Hare kafar v'nishba v'lo hoda. He denied it. He took an oath. He didn't admit. Because we just said before, the case specifically is where the father did not admit and the son did admit. So it doesn't really make any difference. And also, what kind of answer is this that they went to court? That sounds like they didn't go to court until now, but that's not true. It says that he took an oath, his father took an oath. That sounds like the whole time they were in Bezin. Therefore, for all of these reasons, the reasons Rashi gave on the previous summit and the reasons Rashi is giving now, we take out this entire line of the Gemara, and the real way the Gemara should read is as follows. And the proper text is as follows. The text should be, if there is achrayas nechasim, if there's a lien on the property, why is he only paying for the principal? The son, the Yoresh, should also have to pay the fifth. Amar Rav Huna v'chulan, and then Rav Huna says, and we'll answer as we'll see in a moment. And the idea of the question is, if so, mamun gomer, who there's a real monetary obligation over here. V'chomesh nami l'shalim, he should pay the chomesh as well. That's the gears in the Gemara. Afilu chomesh nami m'shalim. Again, the chomesh should be paid as well. And the answer of the Gemara is, according to this girsa, Amar Rav Huna b'reider Rav Yoshua, Rav Huna the son of Rav Yoshua says, Lefi she'ein mishalmin chomesh al kfiras shibud karkos. There is a rule: you don't pay the fifth if you deny something which is a shibud karkos, meaning to say there's a lien on the property. Rashi explains as follows: Lefi she'ein mishalmin chomesh al kfiras shibud karkos. You don't pay the fifth if there's a denial of something which involves shibud karkos and it involves a lien on property. The chomesh amai kasi, because what is the fifth? What is it being paid for? Ashvuas. It's being paid on the fact that this son took a false shvua. That's the whole idea of what obligates the chomesh in the first place. But the problem is when you have kfiras shibud karkos lav shvuhi, that's not called a shvua. The kaimul and shvuas, because we've established in Mesechet shvuas, ein nishboin ala karkos. There is no such thing as a shvua on karka. So if you're talking here about shibud karkos, there is no real shvua to generate the obligation of the fifth. V'hai ben ki yishtaben, this son, when he's taking the oath, kafar lo shibud karkos, he's denying something which involves shibud karkos, the lav achrayis nechasim, because again, if not for the fact that there was a lien on the property, lav ale rami l'shluma, he wouldn't have to pay anything, it wouldn't be an obligation upon him, and that's the real reason why there is no obligation of a chomesh for the Yoresh in this particular brisa. And the Gemara continues with another explanation of this brisa. Rava Amar, Rava says, Hacha b'mayaskin, and here what is the case? Kegon shoysa desakya shel aviv mufkedes bi'ad acherim. The sack of the father is actually deposited by someone else, meaning the item that was stolen, it actually is present, but it's not present in the possession of the son. It was deposited by a third party. And so therefore, as the Gemara explains, Karen Mishalim, the son does have to pay the principal, Da'ised, because the item that was stolen is actually still around. If the stolen item is around, then the son has to return it. But Chomesh lo mashalim, but the added fifth he doesn't have to pay. Because really the oath that he took, it really was a true oath to halo haviyada, because he had no idea that he had this item. It was not in his possession. It was in the possession of a third party. And that's how you can explain why he pays the keren and he doesn't pay the chomesh. Rashi explains, Rava says, Liolam b'gzeila kayemis. Really, we're talking about the fact that the stolen item is around. With the kashalach, and then you had this question then, v'lechayev haben chomesh al shvuas atzmo. The son should be chayev to pay a fifth because he himself took a false shvua. Kevan dehoda, since he admitted that he took a false shvua. Hacha, but here the case is keshaisa desakya. There's a situation where it's in the sack, meaning to say shemamun aviv nasun ba. There's a sack in which the father's money was placed, and mufkedas biyad. The point is that it is mufked, it is deposited by a third party. Whatever was stolen is in this sack. And therefore, the point is, when this person takes the oath, meaning the son, when he takes the oath, he's really saying something that's true. What he's saying in the oath actually is true because he believes, he doesn't realize that it's in the possession of a third party, and therefore there is no chiyav of a chomesh. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Chutz mi pachas shava pruta bekaren v'chulu. It said, let's say the person who was stolen from, he forgave everything except for less than a shava pruta. So in that situation, since the principal that is owed by the gazlan, by the thief, is less than a shava pruta, the halacha that he has to follow him all the way to Madai to return what he stole does not apply, because that halacha does not apply if the karen is less than a shava pruta. And the Gemara says, Amar Papa says, Lo shanu el she'ein gzeila kayemis. This is only true if the stolen item is no longer around. Aval gzeila kayemis, but if the stolen item is still around, tzarich leilech achrav, then he does have to follow into Madai to return the stolen item. And the question is why? He forgave everything except for less than a shava pruta. But according to Papa Chayshinan, we are concerned, shemet tiyakar, maybe this item will go up in value, and so what he initially forgave, even though it's less than a shava pruta, it might go up in value, and it will be worth more than a shava pruta, and therefore, because of that concern, he does have to follow him all the way to Madai, so to speak, in order to return the item. And the Gemara continues, Zika Diamri, there are those that say a different version of the above. Amar Papa says, Loshna Gazela Kayemis, Veloshna She'en Gazela Kayemis. It actually doesn't matter if the stolen item is still around, doesn't matter. If it's not still around, Eino Tzarech Leilech Achrav, he doesn't have to follow him all the way to Madai, L'Shemet Tiyakar Lo Chayshin, and we're not afraid that it might have gone up, that it might go up in value. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Gazal shalosh agudos b'shalosh prutas. If somebody steals 3 bundles and they're worth 3 prutas, meaning each bundle is worth 1 pruta. However, then v'huzlu, then it depreciates in value. V'amdu al shtayim, it turns out that the 3 bundles are only worth a total of 2 prutos. So am hechzer lo shtayim, let's say he returned already to the person he stole from, he returned 2 of the bundles. Chayiv l'hachzer lo acheres, he is obligated to return that 3rd bundle, even though that 3rd bundle is not worth a pruta. Generally, hashava doesn't apply to something that's not worth anything, but in this case, he does have to return that 3rd bundle. And the Gemara says, V'tana tuna, our Tana actually supports this idea, because we learned earlier, Gazal chametz v'avra Pesach. Let's say a person steals chametz, and then Pesach passes. Now the chametz is worthless because Pesach has passed. It's not worth anything on Pesach. Omer lo, so if the chametz is still around, he says to the person that he stole from, Haresh al chalafanecha, take what is yours. I'm giving you back this chametz, even though this chametz is not worth anything anymore. But this is what I stole from you. This is what I am returning. And the Gemara says, Taima de isa be'ene. The reason why he returns it is because it's right here in front of us. It's still around. Halese be'ene, but let's say it wouldn't be around. Afagav dahashtalav memona, even though right now it's not worth anything. Kavan to meikara memono, since originally it was worth something, by shlumai, so he has to pay it. So hachanami, so here also, afagav dahashta lo shava pruta, even though right now this bundle is not worth a pruta. Kavan to meikara have a shava pruta, since originally it was worth a pruta, by shlumai, so he has to pay it back. And we will take a look at Tosis over here. Amar Rava says, Gazal shalash agudos begimel prutos. If a person steals 3 bundles, again they're worth 3 prutos at the time that he steals it. V'huzlu, then they depreciate in value. V'yamdu al shtayim, and now they're worth a total of 2 prutos. Chayiv lahachzer lo acheres. So again, he returned 2 of them. He still has to return that 3rd one. Perish and Tosis explain as follows: Im yeshna be'ein, if it's still around, ma'achzerosa, you certainly have to return that bundle. V'im lav, and if not, let's say it's not around, mishalim le shava pruta, he does have to pay him a pruta, k'mo shahisa shava b'shas ha'gzela, what it was worth at the time that it was actually stolen. And Tosfos note, the same would be true. Let's say he stole one bundle, and it went down in value. That either he's got to return the actual bundle if it's still around, or he returns its value, the pruta, it was worth a pruta, let's say, at the time that it was stolen. The point over here is that they're trying to say an even greater chiddush. Even if originally it was 3 bundles. That he's already fulfilled the mitzvah of returning 2 of them. Nevertheless, he still has to return that additional one. And now, even though this support they're bringing from our Tana, that's only talking about stealing one item and it goes down in value. That's similar to the case of stealing chametz and then Pesach comes. Rav is just adding on a chiddush from logic that it would apply to 3 as well. And Tosfos say, from the fact that it says it depreciated, mashma depshitale, it's mashma that it's obvious. Let's say, for example, a person would steal 3 bundles worth 2 prutos. And then he would return 2 of them. In that case, he would not be chayiv to return the 3rd, because in that case that we just gave, originally at the time it was stolen, lo havim imona, so it wasn't really worth anything. That 3rd aguda wasn't worth even a prut at the time it was stolen. And we're not concerned that maybe it will go up in value. And the Gemara continues, Rava asked the following question, Gazal shtei agudos beprut, if somebody steals 2 bundles and their total value is a pruta, and he returns one of the 2 bundles, so what's the halacha? Do we say that right now he doesn't have a stolen item by him because that last bundle that he's holding is not even worth a pruta, so it's considered worthless? Dilmar maybe, he didn't return the stolen items which he had. He stole 2 bundles, so he has to return 2 bundles. And the Gemara says, Hadar Pashta, then Rava answered the question as follows, Gezela ein kan, it's not considered that he has a stolen item by him, and Hashava ein kan, and it's not considered that he actually returned anything. It's not considered that he did a Hashava of the Gezela. But the Gemara says, 1 second, Gezela ein kan, if you're saying that he doesn't have anything stolen by him, because that which remains is considered worthless, so on the contrary, Hashava yesh kan, it really should be that it's considered to be a Hashava, because he obviously returned everything he needed to return in this situation. And so the Gemara says, no, hachi kamar, this is what Rava means to say. Afal pisha gazela ein kan, even though you don't have a gazela over here, that which he has is not considered to be a gazela because it's not worth anything, but still mitzvahs hashava ein kan, but still there wasn't really a mitzvahs hashava because that which he returned was also worthless. That was worth less than a pruta, so he has not fulfilled the mitzvahs hashava either. And Rabbeinu Chananel explains this line in the Gemara as follows. Amri, they say, Gezela ein kan, there's no Gezela here. Mitzvahs hashava ein kan, and there's no mitzvahs hashava. Rav Chananel Zal Perish, Rav Chananel explains, mitzvahs hashava ein kan, there's no mitzvahs hashava here, means shelo kayim mitzvahs hashava, that he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of hashava. Why? Sharei lo heishav mashen igzal, because he didn't return that which he stole. It's mashma from Rabbeinu Chananel that he would have to return this final bundle. We'll take a look at Tosfos as well. Tosfos say, mitzvahs hashava ein kan, there's no mitzvahs hashava here. Nira delo boy lemifshat ela delo ma'akev mitzvahs hashava. It appears that what the Gemara is saying is that it's not ma'akev the mitzvahs hashava. It's not required to fulfill the mitzvahs hashava in this case. However, mitzvahs hashava mi elokayim, but he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of hashava either. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rav, and Rava says, Harayamru, they say, Nazir shagilach v'shayir shtei saras, if a Nazir shaves his head, but he leaves over 2 hairs, lo asav lo klum, he hasn't done anything, that's not considered to be shaving his head. So Rava asked the following question. Gilach achas v'nashra achas ma'u. Let's say he has 2 hairs remaining on his head, he shaves one of them and the remaining one falls out, what's the halacha? Amar le Rav Achami Difti l'Ravina. Rav Achami Difti says to Ravina, what kind of question is that? Nazir shagilach achas kami boile l'Rava. Is Rava asking whether a Nazir is able to shave 1 hair at a time? It's obvious that a Nazir can shave 1 hair at a time. So in this case, this would be perfectly acceptable. He has 2 hairs remaining. He shaves one of them. The last one then falls out. So he's shaved his entire head. So Amar le, so he said to him, lo no tzricha, it's necessary, meaning the question of Rava is necessary in the following situation. Kagon shenashar achas me'an, he has 2 hairs remaining on his head. One of them falls out first. Now there's only 1 hair remaining. V'gilach achas, and he shaves that last hair. What's the halacha? Mi amrinon, do we say hashta mios haleka shear? Right now, at the time that he shaves that last hair, so there's no shear, there's not enough hair remaining anyhow. He's essentially shaved his entire head. He's fulfilled the mitzvah of giluach. Odilma, or maybe halav giluachu. That's not called shaving his whole head. To make kara hashtaya shtei saras, because originally there were 2 hairs left, so he hadn't finished shaving his head. V'hashta kigilach, and now that he's shaving the last remaining hair, lo have a beisaras, so you don't have the 2 hairs that make it the proper shear for shaving one's head, and so therefore he hasn't really fulfilled the mitzvah. And the Gemara says, Hadar Pashta, then Rava answered the question, Sar ein kan giluach ein kan. If there's no hair here, so then there's no shaving either. The Gemara says, 1 second, he's Seir ein kan, giluach yesh kan, but if there's no hair remaining, then it must be that he did shave his head properly. What kind of phrase is that? And the Gemara says, similar to what it said earlier, Hachi Kamma, this is what it means to say. Afal pisha Seir ein kan, even though there is no hair, mitzvah's giluach ein kan, but still he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of shaving his head. And Tosas explain mitzvahs giluach ein kan. There's no mitzvah here of shaving his head. There's various opinions in terms of what then happens if he hasn't shaved his head properly. So ma'akev milishtos yayin u'milatame lemesim. First Tosas says, according to one man d'amar, he would therefore not be allowed to drink wine at this point in time. He wouldn't be able to become tamei meis ki ilu lo gilach, because it's as if he didn't shave. Kilomar keman d'amar giluach ma'akev, meaning to say this is following the one who holds that shaving is ma'akev in all of these things. If he doesn't shave, he's not able to drink wine. He's not able to be metame meis. Ta'achar yishtahar nazar yain, because when the pasuk says that then the nazar can drink wine, achar kulam, it means he has to go through all of the steps, including shaving. Tosa say there is another man d'amar inami, or you could say l'inyan mitzvah kamar. The Gemara just means in terms of the fulfillment of the mitzvah of shaving his head. Delokaya mitzvah skiluach, he hasn't fulfilled that mitzvah of shaving his head. Valiba dekuli alma then would follow everybody. It wouldn't only go according to one man d'amar. The pluksa ben nazar b'perak gimel minin, because this happens to be machlokas in Meseches Nazir. And Rashi explains, Zamarle Ravachel Ravina Nazar Shagilach Kol Hasaros Achas Kamiboyle Bitmia. Ravach asked Ravina, are we asking a question about a Nazar who shaves his head 1 hair at a time? Kilomar Havada Gilu Achave. What he means to ask is that obviously is considered a good shaving. Kevan Shabishah Shabola Galech, since at the time that he's coming to shave, Hai Shir Havabe Shir Giluach, the part that remains is the amount that's considered a substantial amount that's considered shaving. V'gilach Achas, and then if he shaves 1, V'afapi Denasha Shnia, even though the last one falls out, that certainly would be considered shaving. That's what the Gemara had said. And then the Gemara says, Shenashra achas, no, the question specifically was, let's say that 1 hair falls out first. Because then at the time that he's coming to shave that last hair, that's not really considered a substantial amount, that's considered to be shaving. And we should point out over here that both of these questions of Rava, the question by the Giluach of the Nazir, and the question by the Hashava of the Gazela, are similar because they're both talking about a situation where initially there is enough of a shear, there is enough of a measurement to create a chiyah, but then at the end, the shear is smaller, the shear is insignificant, and the question is whether the mitzvah still applies. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. V'yamar Rav, and Rava says, Harei Amru, they say, Chavis shenikvos tamua shemarim, if you have a barrel with a hole in it, and it's sealed up by the sediments, hitzilua, so in that situation we do say that it saves, it prevents the tumah from crossing over. Rashi explains the case, Chavis shenikva ustamua shemarim, you have a barrel with a hole in it and the sediments close up the hole. Unisanu al piaruba, the case over here according to Rashi is that this barrel is on a skylight, the skylight is connecting the upper floor and the lower floor. And the sediment fully seals up the hole. V'tumah bebayis, and there's tumah in the lower floor, there's tumah in the house. Matzelas al aliyah kula. So the halach is, as long as you have a roof, and let's say this barrel that we're talking about is not mekabel tumah, it's completely sealed up, so then it's going to save the entire upper story. That upper story is not going to be tameh. Milavo basham tumah. No tumah is going to go there. The stimas shemarim stimahi. The point over here is that the sediment that closes up the hole is considered closed up. V'lo shalta betumah. Therefore, tumah cannot get inside of the vessel. But Meseches kelim and perak of elam atzilan is all in Meseches kelim. And so the Gemara therefore continues. Boy, Rava asks the following question: Agaf chetz yamau. If the person seals up half of the hole, what is the halacha? Again, this is a similar kind of question. Initially, the hole is large enough that the tumah would get inside of the barrel, and therefore the barrel would not be able to be a chatzitza. But now you've sealed up half of the hole. Initially, the hole was large enough. Had the hole only been this size in the first place, it would not have been large enough to let the tumah through. Here, initially, the hole was large enough. Now you're sealing up just half of the hole. So what is the halacha in that situation? Rashi says, Agaf lashon magufa. Again, it's a language of sealing up. Agaf chetzi haya batachteh shir nekev l'tame yukliya makabel tuma eino chotzes b'fnei atuma. Again, you had this hole that was large enough that it would become tame, and if the kli is makabel tuma, it's not going to separate from the tuma. The agaf betit chetzi, but then you took like a clay, a mud, you sealed up half of it. Ma'u, so then what's the halacha? Mi amrin on hashta mi oleka shir nekev. Do we say right now there's no longer the proper shear of a hole? Odil mahalo saw some shear steam, or maybe you had a hole that was large enough and you didn't fully seal it up. So what's the halacha in that case? And the Gemara continues, Amalei Rav Yemar le Rav Ashi. Rav Yemar says to Rav Ashi, Lav Mishnah Seinuhi. Isn't that the Mishnah? You just quoted the halacha before from the Mishnah. Isn't that what it says in the Mishnah? Lav Mishnah Seinuhizu. Isn't that the Mishnah as follows? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Chavis Shenikva. If you have a barrel that has a hole in it, Ustamua Shmarim, and it's sealed up with sediments, Hitzilua, so then it saves it, then it is considered a Chatzitza. However, the Mishnah continues, Pakaka bismor, if he seals up the hole with a vine, so then it's not fully sealed. Ad shimarech, so then he has to take he has to take the clay, and he's got to seal up the openings. As Rashi says, Pakaka bismor ve'ein sham shmar, if you have no sediment over there, you just have this vine, ad shimarech betit min hatstadim, so you have to seal up from the sides. Shel zmor, the sides of the vine, l'sos mohetav, you have to seal it up, you have to close it up properly. Hayu bashtayim, let's say you have two vines, ad shimarech min hatstadim, uvein zmor lechaverti, you're going to have to put clay at the sides and also between each of the vines. And so the Gemara therefore infers, time of the mark, the only reason it's considered to be sealed up is because you use the clay, it has to be completely sealed. Halo marach, if you didn't seal it up, so then it wouldn't be considered closed. So amai, why not? That should be no different than when you seal up just half of it. Obviously sealing up half of it is not good. But the Gemara continues, Amri, they respond, Hachi Hashta, what kind of comparison are you making to the case of the vines, in the case where you seal up half of it? Hasam ilo marach, over there by the vines, if he doesn't put in the clay, lo kai, it's not going to stay, it's not going to be permanent. That's why you need to have the clay, you need to have the tit. But agaf chetzia, but in the case where he seals half of it, b'midi de kai kai, you're talking about something that is going to be a permanent, so there you're really fully closing off half of it, that still remains a question. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rav, and Rav says, Harayamru, they say, Gazal chametz v'over all of a Pesach, if a person steals chametz and then Pesach comes, now the chametz is worthless, but the chametz is still in front of us, Omer lo hareshal chalafanecha, so we can say to him, take back what is yours, he just returns the chametz even though it has no value. And so the Gemara says, Boy, Rava asks the following question, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Hey Amud Beis.